My hope for the Widow News Network is that we can share our stories. We can learn from one another. We can inspire one another. We can encourage one another. We're all not going to be the same. We're all not going to share the same perspective. And that's okay because we can learn from one another. And that is my goal with sharing our stories of resilience on Widow News Network, that there'll be a nugget that we can pick up from each other. There'll be a word of inspiration, a word of encouragement, a word of wisdom that we can come away with and say, you know what? I can take another step forward. That's my goal for us. So I'm so excited to share this conversation that I had with Jen Santaniello. She's a life coach. She's a mom. She's a widow. And she's a warrior. She inspired me even today, the day where Fridays where I launched my newsletter, that I would have easily sat in front of my computer and worked on it first instead of prioritizing exercise. And I changed that around today. So here we are in the car. Ren, are you ready for a walk, baby? Rennie? Are you ready for a walk? Say ready for a walk. Yes. Hey, let's go and live our best lives. Let's learn from each other. Let's build community. Welcome to the Widow News Network. Welcome to the Widow News Network. Good news widows can use. Welcome to Widow News Network. Good news widows can use. I'm your host, Misha Poremski, founder of Widow Strong. Today, I have the privilege of introducing someone whose story will resonate deeply with so many of our widowed community. Jen Santaniello never imagined that at just 36 years old, she would become a widow, raising 3 young children after the devastating loss of her husband, Tim, to a rare and aggressive blood cancer. So many widows, Jen, the overwhelming weight of grief, the uncertainty of rebuilding, and the questions that come with a future you never planned. Yet, through her own journey, she discovered something profoundly hopeful, that grief and happiness are not mutually exclusive. We don't have to choose between honoring the love we lost and embracing the life that still lies ahead. Jen is a certified life coach, author of The Widower's Guide to Reclaiming Happiness, and founder of Forward Not On Community, where she encourages widows to intentionally rebuild meaningful, purpose-filled lives. Her message is both compassionate and practical, reminding us that moving forward doesn't mean moving on. It means carrying love with us while choosing one day at a time to live fully again. Jen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
We're so excited that you're here. For those that may not know you, could you share a little about your story and what led you to write The Widower's Guide to Reclaiming Happiness? And I like the way you write widowers. It's not intentionally just for men who have suffered the loss of a spouse. It's widow and then ER, widow, widower together.
Yes. Well, it's all inclusive there for sure. Yes, absolutely. I can share a bit of my story. So I have to rewind to 2014 when my husband was diagnosed with a very rare form of, it was a blood disease, lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's T-cell lymphoma. About 3% of the world gets this particular type of blood cancer, and there really isn't a cure for it. When he found out that's what he had, I had just delivered our 3rd child into this world. Tim had started coming home extremely fatigued from work, and he would literally lay down on the couch at 6 p.m. and not wake up until his alarm went off the next day and go to work. That was our first clue something was off. Then he started spiking high fevers of 103 and 104, and Tylenol would not bring those fevers down at all. So now I'm 36 weeks pregnant with our 3rd child, wheeling him into the Tucson Medical Center in Arizona because he had a virus of unknown origin. He was there for 3 weeks. They underwent hundreds of tests to try and figure out what was wrong. When they couldn't figure out what was wrong, It was determined by the doctors, the medical staff, and the insurance company that he needed an elevated care, and that needed to be happening at the Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale, Arizona, which was 2 hours north of where we were. I wheeled him into the Tucson Medical Center. 3 weeks later, July 29th, is when I watched the most important person in my world get taken by ambulance to a hospital 2 hours away, 24 hours before our third child was born. And I just remember standing in that parking lot, gutted, just deeply gutted that my person was being whisked away and I was bringing new life into this world. The very next morning, I had a scheduled C-section. And I asked, why can't he stay to see the birth of his third child? And insurance made no exceptions. They just said he needed an elevated care, and they just whisked him off to the hospital 2 hours away. It was 9 days later when Tim came home for the first time.
Like right there, having your baby on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Just share a little bit about that, because that happened to me too.
My mother flew in emergency flight when she realized what was happening, so that I had her with me, thank goodness. And as soon as the baby was born, we had left third child number 3 a surprise, because we already had, our oldest was a boy, our middle child was a girl, and so we thought, let this one be a surprise. And I remember when I delivered the baby, the nurses were so accustomed to the mom already knowing the sex that they just whisked the baby away without telling me anything. And I remember saying, what is it? Just tell me what it is. And so they're like, it's a boy, you didn't even know. And so I remember as soon as Evan, my baby, was placed into my arms, my mom FaceTimed Tim from the Mayo Clinic and hospital so that he could see Evan for the first time. And so that was his first meeting with our third child. He, over the course of the next 9 days, had a bone biopsy, which revealed that he had the lymphoma in his blood. Then they realized through other scans that a lot of it resided in his spleen. So he had his spleen removed from the Mayo Clinic. And then he came home for a very, very, very brief period and was able to hold Evan for the first time at 9 days old. And even then, he was so cautious because my 2 and 3-year-old were running rampant around the living room, and he was terrified is a strong word, but he had so many stitches down the middle of his chest. He could barely hold Evan. He was so fragile that he didn't want the kids crawling all over him and whatnot. So it became a very fragile environment for him. And shortly thereafter, at the request of his doctor, he was asked to go live at the Mayo Clinic for chemo treatments, blood infusions. They were basically going to prep his body for a stem cell transplant in November. So they really needed to get his entire immune system down to like baseline 0, so that when the donor's blood was inserted into him, his body wouldn't attack it and he would have this rebirth, right? We joked that in November, when he had this stem cell transplant, it was going to be his new birthday. He might even be speaking European because the donor was from Europe, and all these things. Like it was our hope at the end of this tunnel. But we had to move him to the Scottsdale, the Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale. And so I and my mother-in-law took the 3 children. We rented a house 10 minutes away in Scottsdale.
So you moved 2 hours away to a house that was 10 minutes away from where your husband was at the Mayo Clinic,
so that we could visit with him every day. Yes. And so basically my mother-in-law and I took turns watching the children and visiting Tim. And we did that for months. And then he had the stem cell transplant. Now, anybody who's been on a cancer journey knows that even when the chemo treatments are happening, the radiation, the blood infusions, all of it's happening, the numbers are going up and down, up and down. So you're constantly filled with this sense of despair, and then hope, and then despair, and then hope. And then finally the day came where they just said, we're doing it. And again, that day was we felt like we hit a turn, right? This was the upward turn. This was when life was going to make sense again. We're all going to take off. Everything's going to be fine. And in the 1-year anniversary of this, we're going to be celebrating about how far we'd come. And we had grandiose plans, right? Grandiose. And 2 weeks later, the doctor called me. And again, I was at the rental house with my 3 children. And the doctor told me that they did another bone biopsy and that the lymphoma was still there.
Oh,
And in my state of exhaustion from the whole journey, I literally said, what does that mean? What do you mean? What do you mean it's still there? What does that even mean? Right? And the doctor said, well, we did the bone biopsy, the lymphoma is still there, so the stem cell transplant did not work. So we're going to try another chemo treatment. And I thought, okay, if we ended all treatment today, how long would he have? And very quickly, the doctor said, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks. And I looked at my 2-year-old, my 3-year-old, and my 4-month-old in the next room, and I just lost it. I just came undone. I could barely say goodbye to the doctor before hanging up the phone. Shortly after that, my mother-in-law went to visit Tim at the Mayo Clinic, and I get a call, and she says, the doctors are telling us that we can either try one more chemo cocktail that would potentially wipe out Tim's kidneys, or we end treatment today. You need to come make a decision. And I dropped them next door, again, with bottles and diapers and the whole 9 yards. They're so small, right? They're all under the age of 4.
what are you feeling at this time? How are you even getting through this period of time? It seems like you're just on fumes and hope.
And I had a baby. I wasn't sleeping through the night. So I was on fumes. Here's the thing. Up until this point, even when he was still in Tucson, anytime I went to visit Tim, I would be crying all the way up to walking through that door, to the hospital door. And then I would pull myself together and present a happy ray of sunshine face for my husband because he needed somebody to be strong. In my opinion, in my world, it had to be me. And so that day, now we're 4 months, 5 months later, I'm driving to the hospital. In my head, I'm screaming, I don't want to be the one who gets to decide whether my husband lives or dies. I can't make that decision. I'm sobbing all the way there. And I get into the hospital, I take the elevator up to his floor. And when the doors opened, I'm still having this screaming match in my head about what am I going to say to him? What am I going to say to him that tips the tides one way or the other? And I don't know that answer. And so now the doors open and it was almost like, you know, in the movies where a character is coming through like some scene and they're so in their own world that the outside world almost feels blurred to the edges and muffled, right? When the doors opened from that elevator, that's how it felt. I could see down the hallway the medical staff and my in-laws standing outside of the furthest door down the hallway. They were just standing there. And as the elevator doors opened, they saw me. So now I'm walking down this hallway, having this conversation in my head of what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And as soon as I reached the door, it was like everybody parted. Everybody stepped away to just let me walk in. And for the first time in this whole cancer journey, I did not stop at the edge of the door to wipe my tears and compose myself. I just walked straight into that room because I thought if I stopped, I'm going to lose momentum, I'm going to lose the guts, I'm going to just run away at this point. So I walked in and he was sitting upright in his bed. And as soon as he saw me, his tears started to flow. And the only words he said at that point were, I tried, babe. And when he said that, it was like instant relief that I didn't need to make the decision because he had already done it. And as I rushed over to him to hug him, I also realized that meant he wasn't going to be in my world anymore because he had made that decision. Sorry, I don't really reflect on this moment very often because it hurts. But I knew in that moment that he had been suffering far more than he had let on for months and that he was being strong for us. And so we both let our guards down. And in that moment, We allowed what needed to happen. And if that was a goodbye, that was a goodbye. So I watched the ambulance again take my husband away, and they brought him to hospice that night. And that was the last time I saw him conscious. And I began asking him questions that no 36-year-old ever thinks that she will have to ask her husband. Things like, where do you want to be buried? So the ambulance whisked him away to hospice. I followed the ambulance there. And when he got settled in his bed, I had to start asking those hard questions. And that was, thankfully, I was able to have closure with him that night.
How so?
I let him know that I would raise our kids to be awesome adults. I told him that we would be okay. And he just acknowledged all of it. And I asked him if he was scared, and or if he was just done. And he just said, I'm okay with what's happening. I'm done. Which was a far cry from the first visit I had with him at the Mayo Clinic, where he told me he wasn't ready to leave us yet. So there were 3 months between those two conversations, and a lot of hurt, and a lot of us pretending to be strong when we were falling apart inside. So the whole cancer journey itself was about 5.5 months from the time he started showcasing symptoms to the time he passed. And then I had to go home and tell our children that Daddy was not coming home. That was hard. Really hard. Really, the baby, obviously. Like, no, didn't have to tell the baby, but the other two. And I think it was hardest to tell my oldest, who was 3 weeks away from turning 4, because he didn't understand. Children that small don't understand. He knew he hadn't seen his dad in a while, but he didn't think that he would never see his dad again. And so I took him aside, I put him on my lap, and I said, I have to tell you something. And I just told it to him straight that Daddy was sick. He had a blood cancer, and he unfortunately did not make it. And so Daddy is now in heaven, and he's not coming home anymore. But we're going to be okay. And Sam's first words were, okay, so we can call him? He continued to ask where Daddy was for a year, no matter how many times I repeated the story. That was hard. Yeah.
Did he pass soon after that?
That was the last night he was conscious. Less than 48 hours later, he was gone. Yeah.
So that is its own emotional just tour de force. And then you're widowed with 3 children under the age of 5?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How do you start to pick up the pieces? How do you even take care of you while you're taking care of littles?
I would say that entire first year, Misha, a fog. I was putting one foot in front of the other for the sake of the 3 pairs of eyes who were watching me constantly. I immediately got a job. I moved to Georgia, where I had family, because in Arizona, where Tim and I were, we were out there by ourselves. So I immediately decided to move to Georgia, where I had family, to be surrounded by them.
You had a memorial service and then you moved.
Yes.
As a young mother, like, oh my goodness.
The memorial service was in Rhode Island, which was where he was from. So we did the burial in Rhode Island, and then I made it to Georgia. We went to Rhode Island first. We stayed with an aunt for a few weeks. It was January. It snowed every other day, while I had just come from a sunny, hot 8 years in Arizona, and I wasn't sleeping all night, and then I was shoveling snow all day to help out my aunt. And so I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm so burnt out. So my father called and he said, I'm coming to get you and the kids. And he brought me down to Georgia. And I love it here. I've been here for 11 years now. But I immediately set up shop on my own. I bought my own house. We rented first, and then I bought a house. I immediately went back to work because I was the sole provider for our family of 4 now, and put one foot in front of the other. So I was now a solo parent a full-time working mom and managing an entire house on my own for the first time in my life. And that in and of itself was really hard. So I survived year one. I survived year one.
Could you share with me maybe some, like, the top tips for someone who is they're in the eye of the storm right now? From your experience from being in the eye of the storm, what practical tips would you suggest, or maybe even pillars, would you suggest would be helpful for that time?
What helped me in year one was grief counseling. Going to grief counseling, I did it on my lunch break. I went to 3 different grief counselors until I found one that I actually resonated with. The first grief counselor handed me a sheet of paper with the 5 stages of grief on it. I said, thanks, I could have got that off the internet. The second grief counselor told me it was good to have feelings while stifling a yawn, Misha. Third one was Nope. Third one was the real deal, and she helped me process what just happened and my emotions. And in year one, that's what I needed. I needed to tell that story over and over again. It was my way of healing, right? I needed, and your friends, your family, they were witness of what happened, right? But they don't necessarily want to hear it every time you speak to them, right? And so a grief counselor will let you just talk it out, right? And the more you talk about it, the more healing that happens. So I feel like that is a must in the world of the widowed for year one. Other than that, I mean, I did everything wrong. I made big important decisions when you're not supposed to for the first 2 years, and I'm putting supposed to in air quotes because I didn't do anything by the rules. I just didn't want to be out by myself in Arizona, and so I moved the family.
You followed your instincts.
I did, and I'm like, I have to take care of these 3 children, and I can't do that by myself out here. So I would say try not to make big decisions, but if you've got to do things like I did, then do them. But also recognize that this hurts. The world you trusted is no longer here, and you have to process that. Don't expect to wipe an eye, wipe the tears away and I'm fine now, or I'm gonna be fine. Let yourself feel the feels because you have to move through that. Your body holds on to trauma. So if you're not releasing it somehow, you're just stuffing it down and it's gonna come up later. It'll come up years from now.
Health issues. Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely yes. That's also another reason why I got back into running relatively soon after Tim passed. I had done it for years. Then obviously all of 2014, I was pregnant and dealing with a cancer journey and just no time for any of that. And so I got back into running, which helped.
Movement is so important.
And that physically was helping me release some of the trauma, right? So I was talking about it. So there was the mental health going on, and then there was the actual physical release of it through running. But you don't have to do running. You could go walk, right? Anything to just movement is healing. Movement is healing.
Yes. And cross body movement, actually, it helps our left and right side of the brain talk to each other, so that we're able to process grief into a way that becomes part of our story. It doesn't like log jam our processor.
Sure. That's amazing. Yes.
So I love that you were debriefing your story, you were making decisions, you were allowing yourself to move forward, and then you were incorporating bilateral movement, exercise, in a way that resonated with you. So what happened, now that you've been in Georgia? And
at that point, they had some birthdays that first year, so they were now 4, 3, and 1.
And you had to work. And you had to work.
I was working full time and managing a house. And now I was the killer of spiders and all the things and anything that broke in the house, I was managing it. And all of that felt incredibly hard. Incredibly hard. I will tell you, there was a point, this might have come a little later, there was a time when I had a water bottle cap fall into my sink. And the way that it fell into my sink, it fit the hole on the bottom of the sink perfectly. So now I'm trying to like pick this bottle cap out, right? I'm using my fingernails, like I'm trying to pull it out, nothing. I'm getting knives, I'm trying to jam it out, I'm getting tongs, like trying to get it out. At one point, I bring Sam over, right? Because he's my oldest, he had little fingers. I'm like, hey, can you try and get this out, right? Nothing was working. But Misha, in that moment, when nothing was working, I hung my head. And in my head, I immediately went to the stories of, if Tim were here, he would have swooped right in. He would have taken care of this. This wouldn't have been a thing. And now I have Sam, Emma, and Evan, my 3 children, watching me. And as soon as I hung my head, my baby girl, out loud, whispers, "Do you wish Daddy were here?" And in that moment, when she said that, I knew I had a choice to make. I could either sit there in despair and let the kids watch me, or I could pull myself together and show them what resilience looks like. And for some reason, in that moment, it dawned on me to turn on the garbage disposal. I don't know what made me do it, but I turned on the garbage disposal and then quickly turned it off. And the garbage disposal made ridges in the bottle cap so that I could actually take my fingernail, stick it in one of the ridges, and pull the bottle cap out. And when I did it, all 3 of my children were jumping and hooting and hollering, and she did it. And then Sam, my oldest, turns to them and says, "You know why she did it, right?" And Emma goes, "Why?" She never gave up. That was coming from my oldest child, and they were so little. And it was because I had instilled in them that message: don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. We can do hard things. And that came out of him. And I was so happy that he said that, that I said, "We're going out for ice cream cones. Let's go." And so I piled them into the minivan, because that's what we do. We celebrate when we have a win. And we did. We went out for ice cream. But that just illustrates like how quickly I could go down into that. I call it this rabbit hole of despair, because you can literally spiral. Your thoughts will take you right down there, right? Your thoughts create your feelings create your action, and that creates your reality. And when you're sitting in this despair, the thoughts are creating it. So I knew I needed to shift the thought going through my mind so that I would shift the feeling and thus the action. And that's what got me to get the bottle cap out of the sink and a trip for ice cream.
And a core memory. That becomes a part of who your children are, that mommy's not going to give up. We can do hard things.
Yes.
And what a tremendous example and an image of hope, of practical, granular, working through it for your children. Yes. And I think that they will never forget that. That becomes who they are.
I hope so. And it's funny because you don't really know when they're children. I can't tell you how many times I've asked, am I screwing them up somehow? Am I not doing the right things? And you just don't know until they're adults how you did. I know. Right? And so now they're all about to have birthdays. So I've got 2 summer babies. So I have a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an almost 16-year-old now. And who they have become over these last 10 or 11 years is just something. It's just beautiful to just see who they've become. Because I will tell you, Misha, in that first year, Sam, my oldest, the 4-year-old, withdrew. He was the one sitting across the classroom, refusing to participate in circle time and chewing on everything, even his bed at home. He was gnawing on everything. I had to get him one of those necklaces that he could chew on all day long. And Emma had a completely opposite reaction. She raged. She was throwing chairs across her preschool classroom and then running through the halls of her preschool, tearing artwork off the walls. Her principal thought she was bipolar. It was so to see who they have become today. They're thriving. They're doing well in school. They have awesome friend groups. They have hobbies and things that they're really naturally talented at. And I just think about who they were 10 or 11 years ago. And I'm so proud. I'm so proud of how far we've come.
That's beautiful. And you kept your promise. You kept your promise
So
to your mentor.
that's part of what turned this around, is that promise. I decided I needed to make good on my promise. And that is what launched me out of survival mode. The next 4 to 5 years were one giant self-help journey, but it was because of that promise.
That's amazing. So now fast forward to where you are today. You have your beautiful website, jensantaniello.com, and you're helping others. So, and you've got your Forward Not On
Community. Yes.
community. So share with me how that became a part of your life.
So over those 4 to 5 years, I read a bajillion books. I listened, I mean, this is going to date me, but I've listened to audio tapes on my lunch break. I attended seminars, all in an effort to figure out how. Because grief counseling helps you process what happened, but nobody tells you what to do with the next 20 years. There's a real gap in support for widows in that once you've processed that acute grief, you find yourself saying, now what? And there's no roadmap. There's no roadmap. And so when I got to this other great side, using all the tools and the practices that I include in my book, I remembered what it felt like in years 1 and 2. And I turned around to be the person that I needed, because in those days I was searching hard for answers, searching hard for hope. I wanted to read somebody else's story so that I could say, well, if she can do it, so can I. But nothing like that 10 years ago existed. So when I came out the other side, I decided I'm going to be that person for somebody else. So I got certified as a life coach, and then I wrote The Widower's Guide to Reclaiming Happiness. And only one chapter of that entire book is my story. The rest is everything I did to climb out of survival mode and get to the place I'm in today. So I did that. I've been coaching ever since. That was 6 years ago. And then most recently, I launched Forward Not On, which is a membership community it contains probably a dozen or more resources that I've written since my book. And it's in this nice, cute little app that I love. And then we meet once a week as a group over Zoom, where I do some group coaching. And we talk about things that nobody in your outer world likely understands, like the stigmas around dating as a widow, or the identity crisis of going from a party of 2 to a party of 1. You don't even know what's going to make you happy anymore. How do you know who you're becoming? And we talk about these things that nobody else truly understands, but we do. And we're all moving forward. Every one of us in the group is actually moving forward. We're not sitting in our grief. We're not dwelling on the past. We're all taking steps to actively move forward while keeping our person in our heart with us.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That is certainly going from surviving to thriving.
And part of this was, I figured this out 4 to 5 years on my own. There was no roadmap. And so that's why I wrote everything that I put in my book. Here's everything I did, so that your trip from barely surviving or just maybe functioning in this world, or being quote unquote fine when we know you're not fine, right? Moving from there to thriving doesn't have to take you 4 to 5 years like it took me, because here's my roadmap. This is exactly what I did.
That's such a gift. I'm so thankful. What is your life like today?
It's good. I'm still running. My son and I just ran a 10K together on the 4th of July, so that was fun. He's much faster than me, though. So he's a 15-year-old track star. And as for me, I'm loving working with the widowed community. I love showing up for this community. I love pulling people forward. I love when a widow will come to me and tell me that her best years are behind her. And I tell her that's a choice she has to make, and that if she's willing to try to make this the best chapter of her life, that I'd be glad to pull her forward and then watch as that happens. It's beautiful. I love it. I love doing this work. I love just being a mom. I go to all the sporting events. It's really fun to just be with them and their hobbies, their sports, and it's a little chaotic. You walk into my house and I've got 3 children, and every room you walk into, there's another one. And yet we're all thriving and just living life. So it's been really good. It's very, very important to me still today that I'm still a runner, and I'm still strength train and do the different things to keep my health up there, because I want to be around for a long time. And I had a young widow once tell me that exercise is always the one wheel of the wagon that falls off first. How do you how do you like keep doing it? How do you do it every day? And I said, I make it the steering wheel so that it can't fall off.
Ooh, that's so
When you
good.
make something a priority, a non-negotiable, it stays there and other things fall off the car. Let other tires fall off the car. Your health should be number one, mental and physical, because without it, everything else falls apart. So I am doing very well, and I'm still doing all the things that I was doing over the last 10 years. I guess once I made that decision to honor my promise to Tim, it's a daily choice I made. And that daily choice became easier and easier and easier over time.
That is such an incredible story, one that's still being written, one where you chose resilience and hope and strength and health and body, mind, and spirit. And I'm just so very honored that you would share this incredible odyssey with us. So if for the widow or widower who's listening right now and they're just in the middle of it, what's that word of hope that you have for them?
Oh, it gets easier, and I know that is so easy for people to tell you. And I remember people telling me, just give it time, in time, it won't hurt so bad. And I didn't believe them. I think that time is an element of that, but it's also choice because no one's coming to rescue you. You have to decide whether or not you're going to show up for yourself now. And what does that look like for you? And if you don't know, then I have a slew of strategies that you can use to get there, to help you get clear on what that means for you, because a lot of people don't know. They don't know what would even make them happy. And that's normal. You just had a life intertwined with somebody else, and now that you're on your own, it's normal to feel out of place. It's normal to not know what might make you happy now on your own. But that doesn't mean you can't be happy. And that is a choice you have to make. You can either be a victim of your circumstances or you can become the hero of your own journey.
I love that. I love that. You know, the late Charles Stanley would say, our tragedy does not define us. It's our choices in the midst of tragedy that define us. You have just made such beautiful choices, such heartfelt choices. Thank you so much for sharing with us your hero journey or your Shiro journey. If people want to find you, Jen, how can they connect?
Sure. I'm on social media. So if you're on Facebook, it's Jen Santaniello. I think on Instagram, it's jen.santanello. If you want to learn more about the Forward Not On community, just go to bit.ly/forwardnoton. And yeah, there's always my website too, jensantanello.com. Lots of ways to find me.
Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you for joining us. So grateful for how you're helping so many others. All the best on your journey.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks. Widow News Network. Good news widows can use. Thank you for joining us as we share stories of hope, resilience, healing, and community for widows and their families. To learn more, connect, support, or access resources, visit widownewsnetwork.com.